Welcome. My name is Emma, your virtual tutor. I am very pleased to introduce you a study on students' perception of virtual class environment. This study is co-authored by Ambra Altimari and Caridà from the University Mania Grecia of Catanzaro. This is a very hot topic, as digital education has become the linchpin of the learning process for the new generations and requires, more than ever, the attention of researchers, educators, and policymakers. Let's start with the presentation. Enjoy the video. The study aims to identify factors behind the students' perception of the virtual classrooms. More in details, the main questions this research addresses are: what are the significant factors influencing students' perceptions of the virtual classroom during the pandemic? Moreover, do grade levels make the difference? I am sure most of you have experienced online teaching in the last year. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, online education is no longer an option. Since March 2020, online teaching has become the most widely used method for delivering knowledge. Despite this, online education is not a new topic. Since the 1990s, research in distance education has focused primarily on three dimensions: the characteristics of learners, the characteristics of instructors, and course design. These three dimensions might affect how the interactions among students and between students and the instructor occur, how to engage learners, and how students feel in the virtual classrooms. As already said, the existing literature acknowledges the key role of the three dimensions in affecting students' perception of online environment. Nevertheless, the most of studies concentrate on one or two dimensions at most. Few studies try to investigate how the three dimensions together affect the perception of online environment. Furthermore, there is limited research on the similarities and differences in perceptions of the online learning experience between undergraduate and graduate students. Therefore, understanding these factors is critical to improving the online learning experience for both students and instructors. The COLLES online survey was submitted to students of management classes. Authors selected the COLLES as academics recognize it as the most popular survey to assess students' perceptions of the online learning environment. Data collection provided a data set of 267 valid responses and 24 variables. The COLLES survey includes 48 questions divided in 6 thematic areas. Professional relevance captures whether the course content are relevant to professional practice. Reflective thinking assesses if the online class stimulate the development of reflective thinking. Interactivity evaluates the existence of opportunities for interaction in the online classroom. Cognitive demand reflects the role of the instructor and how she engages students. Affective support assesses the peers' support in the virtual classroom. Interpretation of meaning measures the extent to which students and tutor communicate and co-construct a good reflection and analysis of the topics. The table synthesizes the characteristics of the management courses involved in the survey. The characteristics are codified according to the three dimensions emerged from the literature review. Courses have different focuses, different levels of analysis, and different instructors. Courses differ also in terms of design. Some courses include laboratories and apply projects to real cases, other courses are mainly theoretical. This graph shows the aggregate mean values in each thematic area. Responses are given on a Likert scale with 5 gradations from 1, almost never, to 5, almost always. The graph reveals that the general perception of the online classroom is positive, as the values are equal or higher than 3. It is very interesting to note that the interactivity and the effective support show the lowest average fails, whereas the cognitive demand which reflects the role of the instructor, shows the highest mean score. An exploratory factor analysis with the Varimax rotation applied to the first three factors was conducted to verify the existence of the latent factors, and, hopefully, their correspondence with the three dimensions emerged from the literature. The table shows the distribution of the 24 variables between the three factors. Factor 1 groups variables related to the interactivity, to the effective support, and to variables from the interpretation of meaning, specifically the two variables related to other students. Factor 2 groups variables from the relevance, from the cognitive demand area, and two variables from the interpretation of meaning related to the instructor. The third factor corresponds to the reflective thinking. The three factors pattern is likely to be affected by some specific features of the students. In order to test differences in factor patterns between undergraduate and postgraduate samples, authors compared factor analyses of undergraduate students attending business management, beginners, class, and master's students attending business management and strategy class. The two classes share topic and tutor, but differentiate in the level and the course design. By comparing the results from the two classes, authors focused on the effective class design and student characteristics, holding the role of the instructor constant. Factor pattern in the postgraduate subsample is in line with the factor pattern in the full sample I showed in the previous slide. Instead, the factor patterns in the undergraduate subsample differs from the full sample, and from the postgraduate subsample, in the interactivity, relevance and reflective thinking areas, as highlighted by the red rectangle. Let's discuss now the results related to the first research question. Are there significant factors that influence students' perceptions of the virtual classroom environment during the pandemic? As shown in the previous slides, the results of the exploratory factor analysis confirm the existence of three main factors. Authors coded, following the existing literature, these factors as course design, instructor characteristics, and learner characteristics. Factor 1 groups a set of variables related to the process of co-construction of new knowledge, which implies reflective collaboration among learners. Therefore, the authors coded Factor 1 as course design and development. Interaction between learners is facilitated by course activities. This is confirmed by courses that combine theoretical lectures with creative labs and teamwork, case study analysis and group discussions. Indeed, students in these courses show a higher propensity for interaction. Factor 2 groups variables related to the role of instructor, which ranges from providing expert knowledge to being a facilitator and observer. Instructors empower students to improve their self-management within the online learning process and align it with their goals and future professional practice. The authors coded Factor 2 as characteristics of the lecturer. Factor 3 corresponds to reflective thinking. It was coded as learner characteristics. This is consistent with Artino and Stevens, 2009, and Cho and Kim, 2013, who refer to critical thinking strategies as the inherent and individual ability of students to apply prior knowledge to new situations or to make critical evaluations of ideas. Here, I would like to briefly discuss the key issues that affect students' perceptions of the online classroom. Just to remind, the aggregate mean scores in each thematic area show that the overall perception of the online classroom is positive. Nevertheless, it is interesting to note that the two dimensions of interactivity and effective support, which reflect opportunities to interact and build relationships with peers in the virtual environment, have the two lowest scores. It seems that the online environment hinders peer relationships. This is very surprising. This result seems to contrast to the attitudes of students who are accustomed to building social relationships through digital technologies. However, it probably reflects students' lack of experience with the e-learning platform, as well as the time contingency that forces students to adapt quickly to the online classroom. My second consideration relates to the cognitive demands, which refers to the role of instructor and, more specifically, whether the instructor communicates effectively and actively engages students in the learning process. This area has the highest average score. This score reflects the teacher's personal characteristics, experiences, and approach. Indeed, the instructors involved in the online courses analyzed by the authors had prior experience with online courses and used a variety of roles, tools, and instructional practices, such as Creative Lab, video and audio content, online survey, etc., to adapt the content of physical classes to digital classes. Thus, it appears that online classrooms make the role of the teacher, and his or her contribution to creating a positive and meaningful online classroom, more relevant. The last consideration relates to the second research question of this study. Are there significant differences in the perceptions of students at different grade levels? As I have already shown you, the answer is yes. Consistent with previous studies, the authors found that undergraduate and graduate students exhibit different levels of motivation and self-regulation. This difference primarily reflects the characteristics of the learners and the tools and instructional practices that instructors use in different courses. In my opinion and that of the authors as well, this research increases knowledge in online education field from a management perspective. It identifies the three latent factors that influence student perceptions in the online classroom and analyze factors together, while most of the existing literature analyze one or two factors together at most. This study addresses a call of some authors to analyze and explain the similarities and differences between the perceptions of undergraduate and graduate students. The findings suggest that the differences in learner characteristics between undergraduate and graduate students require more attention from instructors. Especially in the online classroom, where some external factors may hinder interaction, understanding learner characteristics is critical to the success and quality of the course, as it is closely related to course design issues and the various ways to engage learners to better meet their needs. Moving to the practical implications, this study proposes an educational management thinking approach to improve learners' perceptions in the online classroom. To this end, this research raises awareness among higher education organization and policymakers of the need to consider the different roles that instructors must play in the digital classroom in order to successfully engage students in the learning process. As highlighted earlier, the role that instructors play is critical to the development of some of the personal characteristics of undergraduate learners who lack self-regulation and autonomy, as well as a willingness to interact with the professor and peers. Therefore, it seems reasonable to suggest that lecturers should be involved in ad hoc training programs to redesign offline teaching practices to meet the new demands of the e-learning system and students. In conclusion, this research makes a useful contribution to improving the quality and positive perception of online courses. This is especially very important in today's world where both instructors and students are forced to practice online learning teaching. I and the authors hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Your curiosities and questions are welcome. See you on 10th and 11th June to the Synergy SIMA Management Conference.